last 2 minutes. Slowly bring back your awareness. Last 1 minute. Last 30 seconds. Twenty seconds. 10 seconds. Slowly come out of the meditation. You may also stay back with your closed eyes. And today we would be connecting to Master Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo was born in Calcutta on 15th August 1872. The name given to him at his birth was Aurobindo Akroyd Ghosh. In the year 1879, when he was 7 years, he was sent to England for studies. In the year 1884, Aurobindo came to London and was admitted to St. Paul's School. He has mastered several languages like Latin, Greek, French, Italian, and Spanish. He returned to India in the year 1893 and worked for 13 years as a professor in the State College in Baroda. At the age of 38, he went to Pondicherry and developed a new spiritual path, the integral yoga. The main writings of Sri Aurobindo includes The Life Divine, Synthesis of Yoga, Savitri, etc. Sri Aurobindo made Meera, the mother, as his successor. This is in quick about Sri Aurobindo. Let us go more into details. Sri Aurobindo was born in Calcutta. The day was 15th August 1872. The time 5 a.m., the hour of dawn. The name given to Sri Aurobindo at birth was Aurobindo Akroyd Ghosh. When Sri Aurobindo was 5 years old, he was sent to Loreto Convent School at Darjeeling. 2 years later, in 1879, Dr. Ghosh sent his sons, including Aurobindo, who was then only 7, to England. Love for poetry. Sri Aurobindo lived at Manchester with the Reverend and Mrs. Drevets. He developed very early a love for poetry, which was to last him throughout his life. Even at that young age of 11, he contributed a few poems to the local Fox magazine, studied several languages. In 1884, Sri Aurobindo shifted to London and was admitted to St. Paul's. The headmaster was so pleased with his mastery of Latin that he took it upon himself to teach him Greek. It is here that Sri Aurobindo plunged into the literature of the Western world and studied several languages: French, Italian, Spanish, Greek, and Latin, and absorbed the best that Western culture had to offer him. Sri Aurobindo was then in his early teens. He described how he spent several years in the bitter cold of London. During a whole year, a slice or two of bread and butter and a cup of tea in the morning, and in the evening, only a penny saveloy, a kind of sausage, formed only the food. For nearly 2 years, he had to go practically without dinner at that young age. He had no overcoat to protect him from the rigors of the London winter, and there was no heating arrangement in the office where he slept, nor had he a proper bedroom. But Sri Aurobindo was immersed in his books and was feasting on the thoughts of the great. He got the Butterworth Prize for Literature, the Bedford Prize for History, and a scholarship to Cambridge. Admission into Cambridge. In 1890, at the age of 18, Sri Aurobindo got admission into Cambridge. He studied the classics, doing brilliantly, and passed high in the first part of the tripos. The famous Oscar Browning happened to correct his papers and told Sri Aurobindo, "I suppose you know you passed an extraordinarily high examination. I have examined papers at 13 examinations, and I have never during that time seen such excellent papers as yours. As for your essay, it was wonderful." It was thus that Sri Aurobindo grew away from his family, away from his motherland, away from his roots and his culture. He knew 7 foreign languages but could not speak his own tongue, Bengali, began to learn Bengali. Sri Aurobindo also felt that period of great upheaval for his motherland was coming in which he was destined to play a leading role. He began to learn Bengali and joined a secret society with the romantic name of Lotus and Dagger. The Gaikwad of Baroda happened to be in London and offered him a place in his service. Back to India. Sri Aurobindo sailed back to his country in 1893 at the age of 21, having spent the most important and formative 14 years of his life in a foreign land. The moment Sri Aurobindo put his foot down on Indian soil at Apollo Bandar in Bombay, a vast peace and calm descended upon him, never to leave him. Unknowingly and unasked, the spiritual life had also begun. After some time, Sri Aurobindo was transferred to the Baroda College, first as a teacher of French and then as vice principal, where he was very popular with the students for his unconventional way of teaching. Ferocious reader. In Baroda, Sri Aurobindo plunged himself into a study of Indian culture, as if to make up for all the years he had lost. He learnt Hindustani, Marathi, Bengali, Gujarati, and Sanskrit. He was a ferocious reader, and 2 bookshops in Bombay kept him regularly supplied with books sent in crates. Sitting by a kerosene lamp, he would read late into the night, unmindful of the swarming mosquitoes and often quite unaware of the waiting food. Sri Aurobindo read the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, Kalidasa, Bhavabhuti, Bankim, as well as Homer, Dante, Horace, and many others. He also wrote a lot of poetry, and his first collection of poems was published from Baroda. Spiritual experience. In 1903, Sri Aurobindo went to Kashmir with the Maharaja of Baroda. There, on the hills of Shankaracharya, he had a beautiful spiritual experience. In other context, he described a similar experience. Thus, one stands upon a mountain ridge and glimpses or mentally feels a wideness, a pervasiveness, a nameless vast in nature. Then suddenly there comes the touch, a revelation, a flooding. The mental loses itself in the spiritual. One bears the first invasion of the infinite. Once Sri Aurobindo visited a Kali temple on the bank of the Narmada. He said, with my Europeanized mind, I had no faith in image worship and I hardly believed in the presence of God. But he was compelled to do so when he looked at the image and saw a living divine presence. He wrote afterwards, you stand before a temple of Kali beside a sacred river and see what? A sculpture, a gracious piece of architecture. But in a moment, mysteriously, unexpectedly, there is instead a presence, a power, a face that looks into yours, an inner sight in you has regarded the world mother. The fourth experience has an interesting background. His younger brother, Barin, fell seriously ill with mountain fever. When the doctors were helpless, a Naga sannyasi happened to come there. He took a cup of water, cut into four by making a cross with a knife while chanting a mantra, and asked Barin to drink it. The next day, Barin was completely cured. Sri Aurobindo was greatly impressed, and this also proved to be his conscious entry into the field of yoga. Sri Aurobindo said humorously that he had a backdoor entry into yoga, but the immediate result was that he took up the practice of pranayama. Soon there was some startling physical and psychological results. His mind and memory worked with a greater illumination and power. His skin also became smooth and fair. Met Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. Sri Aurobindo met in Baroda a Maharashtrian yogi called Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. Lele asked Sri Aurobindo to remain in seclusion for 3 days. He told him to sit in meditation and not to think. He would find that thoughts were not his own but came from outside and should be thrown away. Sri Aurobindo describes his experience. I did not think either of questioning the truth or the possibility. I simply sat down and did it. In a moment, my mind became silent as a windless air on a high mountain summit. And then I saw one thought and then another coming in a concrete way from outside. I flung them away before they could enter and take hold of the brain, and in 3 days I was free. In 3 days, Sri Aurobindo had achieved the silent mind, which deepened into an experience of Brahman consciousness, began listening to a voice within. Sri Aurobindo had to address a national meeting after 3 days. His mind had become calm and blank. How was he to give a speech? Lele told him that it did not not matter. He had only to bow down to the audience as Narayana and everything would be all right. As usual, Sri Aurobindo followed the directions without questioning, and he found that something else spoke through him, and thus it was for the rest of his life. Everything was done from the silent Brahma consciousness, writing, speaking, or the most intense political activity. This was another great turning point in Sri Aurobindo's spiritual life. He began listening to a voice within, and Lele told him to follow it, and that he now had no need for any further instructions or an external guru. Solitary confinement. A major spiritual experience of Sri Aurobindo was in the prison cell of Alipore in Calcutta. Sri Aurobindo was arrested from his house. He was imprisoned and for a long time kept in a small cell in solitary confinement. The case for Sri Aurobindo was taken up by C.R. Das. The trial lasted for 1 full year. At the end, C.R. addressed the court in these ringing words: "My appeal to you is this, that long after the controversy will be hushed in silence, long after this turmoil, the agitation will have ceased, long after he is dead and gone, he will be looked upon as a poet of patriotism, as the prophet of nationalism, and the lover of humanity. Long after he is dead and gone, his words will be echoed and re echoed, not only in India, but across distant seas and lands. Sri Aurobindo was found not guilty and acquitted. Experience of Krishna as the immanent divine. But this period of 1 year was a very important period in Sri Aurobindo's life. It was a period of intense sadhana when he had the experience of Krishna as the immanent divine, the experience in his own words in a speech in Uttarpara. I looked at the jail that secluded me from men, and it was no longer by its high walls that I was imprisoned. No, it was Vasudeva who surrounded me. I walked under the branches of the tree in front of my cell, but it was not the tree. I knew it was Vasudeva. It was Sri Krishna whom I saw standing there and holding over me his shade. I looked at the bars of my cell, the very grating that did duty for a door, and again I saw Vasudeva. It was Narayana who was guarding and standing sentry over me. I lay on the coarse blankets that were given me for a couch and felt the arms of Sri Krishna around me, the arms of my friend and lover. Sri Aurobindo saw the same smiling Krishna in the magistrate and even the prosecuting counsel. Where was there any place for fear? When Sri Aurobindo had entered the prison, he had said, "The agnostic was in me, the atheist was in me, the skeptic was in me, and I was not absolutely sure that there was God at all." One day, when Sri Aurobindo was sitting in the Karmoyogin office, news was received that the government intended to arrest him. Immediately, there was an agitated discussion all around. Sri Aurobindo sat calm and unmoving and heard a distant voice tell him, Sri Aurobindo went straight to the Ganga and boarded a river for Chandranagore, which was then a French settlement. Soon he received another Adesh to go to Pondicherry. Sri Aurobindo remarked later, "I could not question. It was Sri Krishna's Adesh. I had to obey. Later, I found it was for the ashram, for the yogic work." sailed for Pondicherry. Sri Aurobindo sailed for Pondicherry to start the most important chapter of his earthly life. Sri Aurobindo reached Pondicherry on 4th April 1910. He was then 38 years old. He was received by several revolutionaries of Pondicherry. In fact, some of them had been waiting for an Uttara Yogi, a yogi from the north. They had heard the prophecy that he would come as a fugitive and practice the Purna Yoga. From the year 1910 onwards, for several years, Sri Aurobindo lived with a few followers, depending entirely on donations to maintain them. Outwardly and financially, these were very difficult times, but the inner yoga, intense and unwavering, went on unaffected by outward circumstances. Meera, the mother. For 4 years, it was a lonely and solitary journey. His sadhana and work were still waiting for the coming of one who was to be his true collaborator, the mother. And she came from France in the year 1914. On March 29th, a young French woman, Mira Richard, came to Pondicherry with her husband Paul Richard and met Sri Aurobindo for the first time on the physical plane. When Mira saw Sri Aurobindo, she recognized in him the Krishna of her vision and knew that her place and work were with him in India. Major works published. On 15th August 1914, the monthly Arya was launched. The Arya continued for 7 years, and through it, Sri Aurobindo presented to the world his great spiritual vision and the path to attain it. Nearly all the major works of Sri Aurobindo, which were published later in book form, the Divine, the Life Divine, the Synthesis of Yoga, the Human Cycle, the Ideal of Human Unity, on the Veda, the Upanishads, essays on the Gita. In the year 1915, with the outbreak of the First World War, the Richards had to go back to France. Mirra went to Japan in 1916 and returned to Pondicherry in 1920, never to leave. Sri Aurobindo and the mother believed that evolution is primarily a process of the manifestation of higher and higher levels of consciousness upon earth. As life descended into the inert matter and mind into unconscious life, so too high levels are waiting to descend. The highest of these is the supermind, and it was the constant endeavor of Sri Aurobindo and the mother to bring it down for a radical and permanent transformation of the earth. Mother, his spiritual endeavor. Sri Aurobindo installed Mira as the mother of his spiritual endeavor, his collaborator and equal, and handed over to her the responsibility of the inner and outer life of the small group of sadhaks who had gathered around him. He then withdrew into seclusion to concentrate on the next step of his yoga. Through though Sri Aurobindo had withdrawn, he continued to guide the disciples inwardly and through letters. Day after day, he sat late into the night, answering their smallest queries, apparently even the most trivial, and pouring out his love and light. At the same time, he remained in touch with the world events and movements, shaping and molding them with a purely inner spiritual force and action. 5th December 1950. On 5th December 1950, at the age of 78, Sri Aurobindo left his physical body. His body was kept in state for 4 days and given samadhi on 9th December 1950. So this content is extracted from Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, a brief introduction by Vijay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. And it is such a beautiful way to start our day or to end our evening for those joining from US to listen to such great journey of such masters. What a journey it is. Sri Aurobindo, starting his early life and how he had learned several languages living in a foreign country and living in a cold winter without anything because he completely dissolved into literature, reading books. And the common thing in many masters I notice is this being a ferocious readers. So he was one such, and they say that once he returned back to India as a professor from bookshops in Bombay, he used to regularly get books sent in boxes, crates, and he used to just simply sit under the kerosene lamp and read into night without recognizing the mosquitoes, the food, nothing. And of course, this will all lead into one's own inner quest and the spiritual experience he had had. So it is such a beautiful time to connect to these spiritual masters. Then his intense practice into yoga, starting with pranayama, and as he started listening to this voice within, it is such a nice thing to understand. Whatever he knew all through his life, suddenly he becomes an empty mind, and then there was an inner voice that guided him, that spoke through him, that wrote through him. So, and then his divine experience in the prison cell, and how he said it was his, how Sri Vasudeva, Sri Krishna was taking care of him, and how he felt his presence everywhere, and how the same voice had guided him to go to Pondicherry and settle there, and then get in contact with Mother Mira. So it's such a wonderful journey to connect to such great master. And there are so many books of his: The Life Divine, Synthesis of Yoga, The Human Cycle, The Ideal of Human Unity. Then he wrote On the Veda, the Upanishads, essays on the Gita. So we all should be inspired in many ways, listening to these masters' lives, getting inspired, motivated, just to, to understand that we all have greater potentials. And in our spiritual journey, we are all bound to experience such great things and be in service. So, thank you, Masters. I hope you all had a wonderful time doing meditation together today and then listening to this Master. If anyone would like to share something about this Master and something that you learned, if you have visited or read his books or visited um, Pondicherry, or if you know anything about Mother Mira. So feel free to unmute yourself or write in chat. Equally, you can prefer to stay in silence. Everything is fine. Yes, Rashmiji, please go ahead. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. Namaste, Master Ram. It was beautiful meditation and spiritual journey of Sri Aurobindo's story was really good. I just want to share about Mother Meera, which I read somewhere in book. I don't remember. Like, can animals, jump into, what spiritual this one, So she gave. I think there was an cat near the ashram and whenever she used to sit for meditation, Mother Meera, even this cat used to sit silent, it seems. And one day, I think it transformed into a spiritual plane. cat. So from that incidents, we come to know even animals can attain that consciousness directly. I know, something like that.
Very wonderful. Beautiful to listen this experience. Indeed, there are many masters who speak about domesticating animals, and even Patriji many times referred this point that as we domesticate animals, we give them a greater support in moving into their spiritual journey. So they say that once we domesticate animals, we give greater chance for them to move into the human lives faster. So thanks for sharing this experience of Mother Meera relating to how we have to take care of animals as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I ask one question?
Please.
Is there any association of Sri Aurobindo with the Ramakrishna or Swami Vivekananda? Was there any connection, or it came at later stage?
I really do not know much more
Yeah.
about those associations.
Yeah.
Maybe I think, at those times, most of these spiritual masters, particularly, they were also very active in during these freedom fights. I think they were in a way or other later related, and then even spiritually. Maybe any of you masters here online, if you have
Yes,
any information on that, please share.
yes, Ram.
Yeah, yes, Ranjaniji.
I think Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Aurobindo's time-wise, they might have been the similar time. I think he was also born somewhere in the 1860s or something, if I remember correct.
Hmm.
So maybe they were at the same time, but I don't know if they drew inspiration from one another or whether Aurobindo was inspired because of Ramakrishna. But since you mentioned Kali, perhaps there must have been some inspiration from
Hmm.
Ramakrishna. I was reading a book last month regarding integral meditation, where they were talking about Aurobindo's view and another Western scientist's view about how the mind is about 7 characteristics. I will perhaps share that chapter when I come back to do a session.
Hmm.
It was on my mind as I was reading that I should share. There were like 2 or 3 scientists who were talking about the mind itself and how through meditation the different layers of mind, like will, which one dictates the emotion and the part of the mind. It was a very beautiful chapter from that book, Integral Meditation. So I will share it when I come back, but that was also one view of Aurobindo in that book. So I
Wonderful.
think it was a good topic today that you have covered, and thank you so much for the beautiful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjaniji. So
Yeah,
we will wait for this article to come through you.
definitely.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we see here in the chat few masters mentioning Nalini ji, Madhavi Garu, Punita ji, Lavanya ji. So thank you. Thanks for all the comments. And yes, Ranjani ji, Aroville is a great place. It's also in our list to visit. I think this year and we will be there. Anyone else, masters?
Hello, Ram. Hi.
Yeah.
I I read about Aurobindo master in somewhere around when I'm childhood, like in our school books. But again, now I got a chance to listen from you. Is it the same chapters you are reading, Ram, from the book you mentioned earlier?
Yes, it is from the same
Guru.
collection of masters, which is Gurus of India. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I sometimes feel there are many, many masters that we have forgotten them, that you're bringing into light now to read more about them and know more about their lives, because we
Yes.
have we only talk about few masters who we are like reading or reading more about them, but these are the masters where their lives has not read through much, because I don't know much of the information not present or sometimes. But this is a I wanted to go back and read my books, all books which I have left long back in my childhood. This is the first book I read when I'm very, very young. This is some book someone gave me. It's not a book, I think it's a collection of articles written when I'm traveling somewhere. And also I read he's a very ferocious writer actually. He invokes people to start lead a machine, let a big British machines, like how you must think of humanity. And he has very, very uplifting and ferocious writings. I read long back. But yes, thank you for that. I'll go back and read again about this great master.
Yeah. I'm sure listening to these masters only inspire and motivate us much more in each one of our journeys, because in one master's life we can realize how their journey was, and that is only going to add much more depth to our own inner search. So how their life was, it's even to read, when I was reading I felt, wow, I mean, what great things these people have achieved in their lifetimes. So sure, Meenagaru. So we all need to connect to these masters' lives, to their wisdoms, to their suggestions of books, to the books they wrote, because there is a lot from which we can learn. And thanks to Spiritual India team for bringing such a wonderful collection of all these masters. So today we have learned the third master. We started with Osho, then Ramana Maharshi, and today Sri Aurobindo. Our next session would be about Master Meher Baba. So we have 27 masters all in to cover. Yes, Mamataji, please go ahead.
Namaste, Ramji.
Namaste.
Namaste. Yes, it was a beautiful wisdom sharing, and I want to share my experience. I had visited to Cochin for Aurobindo Ashram. Really, it was so energetic, and I felt the oneness, the universal love, and those are the experiences. I had not read more about Master Aurobindo, and I was knowing somewhat some clips like that from my elders. But I always prefer the experience. So I went there, and it was a beautiful experience. And I felt that, when we want something, when we expect something from that place, or there was a quest of experience of the spirituality, we won't get. And when I visited it the first time, there was something, means a spiritual tension. It was like that. And after 1 hour, just I walked in all the places around the ashram, and I was so released. Means at that time I went inside the ashram, and that was the beautiful experience, the oneness experience. See, that was a greatest lesson for me from Master Aurobindo. So the masters give lessons and give message to each soul when we connect to the soul conscious. So thank you each and everyone. And thank you, universe, gave me opportunity to share with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mamataji. Very happy to listen your voice and to listen to your personal experience being in Aurobindo's ashram. I'm sure we all need to visit such places. You know, there will be some inner changes that happen being in those spaces, just like how Aurobindo had when he was on the top of these Kashmir mountains. So thank you. Thanks for sharing. Yes, Mridulaji, kindly go ahead.
Very nice, Ram. I actually visited Pondicherry and Auroville and went to the ashram. It was mid 80s, actually, 1983 or 84. And it was very peaceful. They were just building the Auroville, the circular place for meditation.
Mhm.
And part of it is similar to the pyramid in Bengaluru from the pictures. I didn't get to see the completed, but that's the first time I visited an ashram and got to know about the mother and Sri Aurobindo. It's very, very peaceful. The friend of mine from medical school, her mother and her, they lived there. She grew up there. And there's a beautiful lifestyle there that they don't actually use currency. They donate their service. And this is in Auroville, not Pondicherry. And this was that time, and it's probably even more right now. So I have yet to go back and visit. But I have very fond, beautiful memories. It's very peaceful, like it was described. It's a very, very, the environment is oneness. I felt it. It's very peaceful. I don't think of course I haven't been to an ashram since then, but it was just a beautiful, peaceful experience. I didn't want to leave the ashram. I just, must have been 19, 20 years old. So, and I still remember to this day. Even the mother, I don't know, I know she came from France, but it's almost like she belonged there, even though her energy is still there. Anyway, that's what I remembered. It's been a while, but I have to go back and see after so many years. So just wanted to share. Yeah, whenever I hear Sri Aurobindo and Mother, my heart just, there's a sense of peace when I hear their names. Thank you, Ram.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mridulaji. Happy to listen experiences from people who have visited these beautiful places. And good to know that you were there in your early ages long ago where you could experience these places. Yes, I heard about Auroville where there is no currency exchange, and then they are lot into different ways of living, including very organic farming. So I think there is a lot to learn visiting and being in those places. And thanks for sharing your journey.
Yeah, and there's no judgments. There's no it's so free. I don't even know. I think everyone has to go visit. I mean, this was in the 80s and I felt it. So things advance as the time goes by. It was just a free-spirited place. Like you just can exist there, without any worry, and you give your service to somebody, you have a home, you have a house, you have a place to stay, you have to eat. There's no expectation, there's no judgments. I just loved it. I don't know. I want to go back again if I can.
Yes, we all go together sometime soon.
Yes. Sounds really good. I want to do a tour with you and Madhu and going to India sometime to go to these beautiful
Sure.
spiritual ashrams, I'm thinking because I saw you went to the mountains.
Yes, I'm sure we are going to do one together this year, Mridulaji,
Yes.
with all of our friends from the Beam family.
Yes. Would love that.
Yes. Perfect. You see the advantage of connecting to these masters. We also have some nice plans that happen. So thank you. Anyone else, friends? Okay, then. So thanks a lot for being here together. So in our next sharing, we would be listening to Meher Baba. We will post it when that would be. The moment we have a slot available, we will be having this sharing. So thanks again. I wish you all a wonderful continuation. Namaste.